welcome to Damn That's Podcasting. This is episode 32. I am your host, the Obro, Owen Brody, and this week we're going to talk about the making of Damn That's Podcasting. Why? Why we talk about the making of? Well, I'll tell you why. Because when we started coming up with the idea of doing this podcast, I started researching online and trying to figure out what software we needed, how to do it remotely and record our voices and our video. And I got a ton of sponsored results, right? So I get oh, you want to buy this and this subscription and that subscription, and oh, you can use it for free, but only for 25 minutes. And I just want to cut all that out. Now, one of the things that has happened as we've been on this podcast journey is people have asked, what do you use? What do you use for software? What do you use for hardware? How do you do it with two guys that are in Maine and you in Vermont? How do you do it? So I've kind of roughly put together, I know we break in the rules here. I did prep work for the podcast this week. Yeah, I'll let you clap for a minute. I did some prep work. I put together kind of a rough draft of things. And actually, now that I'm recording this, I meant to go back and do a little research, but that's okay. Because there's different things that kind of happened as time went on. We got new equipment. We tried different things. And I'll try to just recount some of that. But where does it start, right? Where does this whole podcast journey start? We talked about doing it. We had to come up with a name. Damn, That's Podcasting. Where did that come from, right? So the origin of that name is me and Murdoch and a few other friends. We did this thing called Damn, That's Wrestling. And you can find that on YouTube. It's funny. We had a blast doing it. To be honest, it was a great experience. It was during COVID. You could only have 10 people in a room at once, according to restrictions. So we made this whole wrestling event thing, show, whatever you want to call it. 4 different episodes, all in the span of one day. One of these days, I'll do a full behind the scenes on that process, because it was really, really cool and a lot of fun to do. Murdoch and I had always talked about doing a podcast, and we never pulled the trigger on it until Murdoch had kind of mentioned that Kurt wanted to do a podcast as well. And then we figured, well, fuck it, we're just going to do it. And for some reason, Damn That's Podcasting just became the name. And we decided we'd make Damn That's a brand. So our logo is the D exclamation point T, damn exclamation point, that's whatever. So that's kind of the name, and that's how it came across, because we also didn't want to pigeonhole ourselves into being a gaming podcast or a comedy podcast or a movie review podcast. We wanted to kind of be whatever. So we didn't want to come up with something that was going to pigeonhole us in any sort of category, right? We wanted to be out there. You could listen to this and not know what you're getting, but at the end of it, you go, you know what? Damn, that's a podcast. I just listened to a podcast. Go me, right? That's kind of how it started. Now, when we first started, I don't remember, and this is where I meant to do the research. I believe I had this microphone, which is a Shure MV7. It has XLR and USB, which is great because you can actually hook it up to 2 different devices at once. More on that if we talk about the gaming stuff. I don't know if I'll get into that today. I believe Kurt may have gotten this microphone at that point too, but Murdoch was using a different microphone. So our quality levels were a little different, but we were able to make it work. And even though our qualities were a little different between each person when they were speaking, we still made it happen. But eventually we all got the same microphone. So that helped a lot with the overall quality of everything. The video portion was actually something that I was kind of against at first, because I feel it's easier to edit a podcast if you don't have video. Because if we stop and stumble on words, or I was thinking if we had dead space, you then cut the video and there's that little bit of joltiness, or you put a transition in there. And it takes you out of the moment if you're actually watching, right? But Murdoch and Kurt really wanted to do video, and I was cool with it. We're going to do it. But that was part of the other problem, right? So it's how do we record the video and the audio with some software that's going to let us just do it however we want? And give us that flexibility where we don't have a time limit. We don't have to pay for a subscription, because we really did not want to pay for anything. We don't pay, other than the equipment that we've bought, we don't pay for anything with this podcast, which is great. Although the equipment itself was not cheap, but whatever. it works and it got the job done for all these episodes and still continues to get the job done. But we still had like a missing piece, right? So we wanted to do video, we wanted to do audio. We had to figure out how to get that all together, right? So we initially looked at Zoom. And Zoom, you had like a 45-minute time limit. And we didn't want to be structured by like a time limit. We didn't want to be constricted, I should say, by a time limit. There's also StreamYard, which I think for free was like 30 minutes. But then it's like, okay, now you got to pull in guests. How do you do that? There's a subscription service for that, of course. There's a ton of different ways to do it, but what's going to work best for us? So did a little bit more research, and I had been streaming for a while on Twitch. So I was familiar with this software called OBS, Open Broadcasting Software. I think, maybe I just made that up, I think. No, I think I'm right. But that's what I used to do streaming. So I had looked at on YouTube to see if you could do OBS with guests. And then I got to thinking like, okay, if I can just put a window into OBS, why can't I use Discord? We have Discord, we have OBS, we have the Shure MV7s, and we're good to go, right? So we can talk on Discord for as long as we want with video, capture it all in OBS, and record it with these microphones. We're awesome. Then, like, we did a couple episodes. I think the first 3 episodes, we have obviously recorded those. We've said this ad nauseum. We've recorded those episodes all in one day. So getting those out there, it was like, boom, 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 right? You can't go back and fix it. And then I was like, okay, well, we got to make it kind of look a little bit more attractive for the video portion. Because I noticed in those 3 episodes, looking at the analytics, which I honestly, I don't like to look at that stuff for a couple reasons. One, it's draining, right? So when you make this podcast, you put all this effort into it, and then you look and you're like, it's got 9 listens. 9 listens. That sucks. But like it takes a while to grow, and I know that. But I know if I'm looking at that, I'm going to feel defeated, me personally. I'll feel defeated, and I'll beat myself up over it and go, you know what? We should be doing better than this. But I didn't want to look at it because I didn't want to have that stress. I just wanted to have fun with my friends. But I did notice that when I did look at those analytics, that the video version and the audio version were getting like very close to the same amount of views. So I said, okay, you know what? I maybe need to put a little bit more effort into the video version. Because originally, like, I don't know if you've ever used Discord, but it's just like boxes on a screen. So what we did is we would go into, I forget what they call it, but like an activity, right? So that it would have 4 boxes, so that all 4 of us would be on the screen, or 3 of us rather would be on the screen. And then in the space of that empty box, I put the Damn That's Podcasting logo with like the neon lights. Very, very rudimentary setup, extremely basic. You still had the green boxes that like would pop up around whoever was talking. So simple, very, very minimal effort. But then I made some overlays where I took like the brickwork from that design and I made that kind of like the background and kind of give that neon vibe with our boxes there, and put like little nameplates so people knew who we were, and had our social media, and like it really like brought the elevated the production quality, if you can even call what we do a production. So it made things kind of look cool, and I was actually really proud of the way that turned out. And there was a lot of trial and error behind the scenes as to how to make that look right, because the title, like having the episode title, was like something I wanted to add. I forget which podcast. There was one, because I sat down one day and I said, I'm going to watch some podcasts because I don't ever watch podcasts. So I just watched like a few different ones, and there's some that are so simple. They just have their logo on the screen. They don't have any video. It's just audio. And I'm sure people consume content that way. I'm sure that people who are watching our feed don't have their eyes on it all the time. And the reason I can kind of tell that is because outside of like us, the people that would watch on YouTube, like I would pop like little images on the screen that would like make me laugh. Because this whole podcast was all about making me and Murdoch and Kurt like laugh, just popping ourselves pretty much. So at times I would put different graphics on the screen that would kind of, make me chuckle, and I would I wouldn't tell the guys I was putting them there, and I would know, okay, they watched the video one because they saw that. They laughed. They sent me a text and said that video was funny. And that cracked me up, and again, we were just having fun with this. But I would do that. And then as you see, like once we switched over to that overlay, I kind of stopped doing that a little bit. The only other time I threw graphics on there was a couple tournaments I think we did, like some graphics that popped up. Yeah, you know what? Let's talk about the graphics. So again, I made like a few notes and I'm already not even paying attention to them. But anyway, the graphics. So let's talk about that. So I have always been interested in doing like graphic design. I took like one class one time and I thought it was cool. And that kind of got me into Photoshop and like that kind of stuff. Then like, fast forward to now where we have all these cool devices. I do all of my, I say air quotes, graphic design because I don't consider myself a graphic designer. I just mess around with stuff. I do all of mine on an iPad with an Apple Pencil, and it's a very capable device, and the software is very, very capable. I use Affinity Designer. Wow, easy for me to say. Affinity Designer, Affinity Photo, and Procreate. Procreate is like, it's very much more geared towards like drawing and things like that, but it's another very capable device. And I've learned a lot about how to use all these, programs together. But that's how I created like the Damn That's logo, the Damn That's Podcasting logo, the new overlay that you saw in the video that I posted, giving you the update. If you've been on twitch.tv/the Owen Brody, all those graphics were made in a combination of Procreate and Affinity Designer, and sometimes Affinity Photo if there was like a certain thing I wanted to do that I couldn't quite create in Designer. I would do it in Photo. Great programs though, and not that expensive, right? So that's a perk. But all those graphics were made there. As far as video editing, which again, like I didn't want to spend money. Well, I used the free version of a program called DaVinci Resolve, which is an extremely powerful program. If you pay the $300 to get like the full version, that's like Hollywood studio quality type stuff. So that's literally all I use is just the free version. And that allowed me to do a couple things. One, obviously edit the video, which didn't really take that long, to be honest. I also was able to do a thing called normalizing the audio, which basically takes all the audio and tries to make it like the same volume. So one's not talking louder than the other, which it didn't always work perfect. We were able to kind of mitigate that later on, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But in DaVinci Resolve, I did a lot of the editing. I did all of the editing in there, and I exported the audio, exported the video. All of it was done in DaVinci Resolve. Such a powerful program. If you've never checked it out and you're into video editing, definitely download it. There's so much that it can do for free. It's awesome. When it comes to editing, there really wasn't much we edited out of this podcast. Like, for real. It was mostly a straight run, with the exception of, like, technical difficulties, which episode 10 was littered with those. Episode 20, I believe, was too, if memory serves me right. Occasionally, like, something would be said that where, like, maybe we were talking over each other a little too much and you couldn't quite understand it. And it was like, I remember editing out one chunk of, like, us kind of all three of us talking at once. And it was like, hold on, we need to stop and reset. So I remember editing that out. Really, that's about it. There wasn't anything else that I edited out. So it was a pretty easy thing. There were times where I didn't even listen to like the whole podcast all the way through because I would edit it pretty much the day after we recorded it. So it was still pretty fresh in my mind. We would record on Sundays. I would generally edit it on Mondays, and then it was ready to go. Occasionally, I'd wait till Tuesday to edit it. I say occasionally. I probably did that more than I want to admit. And then, have it ready for Wednesday morning. Now, I mentioned the audio earlier, and so we'll talk a little bit about that, because that was probably, obviously we're a podcast, right? That was probably the thing that changed more frequently than like the look and that kind of thing. Like I said, we all started with kind of different microphones, and then we all got on the same page with the same microphone. But the trouble was that we were using a combination of DaVinci Resolve, OBS, and Discord, right? So my audio could be completely adjusted because it's my microphone going into my computer. It's its own audio. Because their audio was coming from Discord, their audio was always lumped together. So if Murdoch was talking louder than Kurt, I would have to have them change it on their end. I couldn't change it on my end here. I would have to say, hey, Murdoch, turn your microphone down or turn your microphone up. Occasionally those parts like would get edited out too. Like there'd be something crazy they would have to fix. But yeah, so I would have to have them adjust their audio because I could only adjust mine, make me louder, make me quieter, or make the both of them louder or quieter, if that all makes sense to you. Maybe I'll do a video version of this where I can kind of show you exactly what I'm talking about because I think it'll make a little bit more sense. But basically, I had full control over me and I didn't have full control over them, just them as a whole. So to mitigate that and to give me full control over everybody's audio, we started using this program called Audacity. Again, another free piece of software, yeah! This is where like fancy music would play, but I didn't want to pay for fancy music. Anyway, so Audacity, free program. You can just record audio. A lot of big podcasts use this. It's great. You just hit record, you talk, you get your sound waves, you can edit it real easy. Super good program. It's a little intimidating at first just to look at because it looks like it doesn't do much. But then as you start to dive in, you realize it does a lot and that you need to learn how to use it. Now, I had like a tiny little bit of experience with Audacity because we did this podcast using some mobile recording software where we could, or hardware rather, not software, where we could record podcasts in a wrestling locker room. We called that show Sitting with the Syndicate. I think there's 3 episodes still out there. You can check that one out. It was a lot of fun. We basically just set up microphones, and as people walked by, we just said, hey, come here, come just talk to us. So with that podcast, I had some experience using Audacity, but it was still going to be a little different with this podcast for a couple of reasons. One, it's not all one device capturing all the audio, and then I import it all, and there we go. They have to email me their audio. Now, the first couple times we did it, I didn't realize that their settings, if it doesn't match my settings, can make things kind of wonky. You probably never noticed this, but if you watch some of the episodes where we started using Audacity, by the time you got to the end of the episode, the audio was out of sync. You know, Murdoch's mouth would move, and the audio would kind of lag a little bit behind. It wasn't super obvious. It didn't look like, you know, a dubbed movie would look like, but it was obvious enough to me where I was like, oh shit, we got to fix that. So of course I research it and figure out, okay, this is what's going on. We got to have the right settings. It's all about the settings. Once we get that figured out though, it was smooth sailing until you get into the editing room, because now I have 3 different streams of audio. I have 1 stream of video. Now, DaVinci Resolve has this cool feature where you can link audio by the sound wave, which is great if you have all the audio in one thing. Let me explain. If I'm shooting a video and the camera microphone is working, but I am also using an external microphone talking into it, and maybe I'm using like an interview where I'm reaching over and handing someone else that microphone and they're talking into it and I'm handing it back. I have 2 audio files. I have the audio file from the camera, and I have the audio file from the external recording software, whatever I'm using, or hardware rather. Why do I get those confused? I don't know. I don't really get those confused. I just am today. So I would have 2 audio files. Now, those sound waves would at some point match up perfectly because they're going to be the same thing essentially, right? Depending on when you started recording. So if you do that, you put it into DaVinci Resolve and you say match up by sound waves. And it will actually like, boom, link it right up and syncs the audio so easy. And then you just delete or mute the audio that you're not going to use, which would in that case of that example be the camera audio. You'd use the good audio from the external equipment. Now with this, I can't do that because if I take my sound wave and I say match it to the video, it only has my parts. Same thing with Kurt, same thing with Murdoch. So I had to basically look at the sound waves and look at a part where someone was louder than they normally were and talking just by themselves so I could match up the video with the audio. So the first step of editing always took a little longer because I had to get that audio to be in sync for all 3 of us. I'd have to repeat that process 3 times. 1 for me, 1 for Murdoch, 1 for Kurt, all using the audio that I recorded in OBS from Discord directly. So it wasn't like a super easy process, but once you got everything synced up, it was fine. Once we figured out our settings needed to be all the same, and then it was smooth sailing from there. The advantage to having something like Audacity, though, gave me the ability to freely edit everybody's audio. So say I sneeze, or actually there was one episode I was kind of coming off of a cold, so I was sniffling a lot. So you'd hear like you heard that, but I would edit it out. So I could, sniffle and you wouldn't hear it and wouldn't know. The only thing you would catch is if you were watching the video and you saw me sneeze or cough, you wouldn't hear it. because I'd edit it out. Same thing with Murdoch or Kurt. If there was a loud noise or something in the background, I could edit it out. And then I could also do the audio levels. So if, Kurt was talking louder and Murdoch was talking like quieter, I could, bring those levels up a bit. So that was helpful. It was so helpful. So again, if you're looking to start your podcast, let me kind of recap again. If you're doing just an audio only podcast and it's you and a remote guest, use Discord, then match up the audio with Audacity. In that case, even if you're not doing a video podcast, I would record the video. And here's why. Because if you have the audio and they send you their audio and they hit record at a different time than you, then you would want to match up that audio with something. You can either do that, or at one point you can, both clap, which would then make like a big spike in the audio, and you can visually see that, and you can say, okay, that's kind of our syncing point. So you do that, or you do 3, 2, 1, go, something like that, where you can kind of sync it up. I personally like to match it up with video, but to each their own. If you don't want to record video or don't have the means to record video, maybe your computer's not like fast enough to record video, or you don't have a camera, like, geez, right? That could be a thing. You would just do the loud noise and make like a mark, for example, and just link those up. Then that way, when I'm talking and I say, hey, what do you think of that? And you respond, then it's all in time and there's no mess up there. So if you're doing that, that's definitely Audacity is the way to do it. Again, microphones, there's so many microphones out there. I could go on for days with microphones. I truly believe the Shure MV7 is probably the best bang for your buck as far as audio quality, as far as flexibility. For example, let's talk a little bit about the streaming stuff. The streaming stuff is fun, but it's a pain in the ass when you have multiple people with you. So I want to be able to hear Kurt and hear Murdoch on my stream, right? So in order to do that, what I used to have to do, because I would use a Blue Yeti microphone, which was a great microphone as well for USB. I would use that for USB to my computer. And then I would have another microphone hooked up to my PlayStation and set on my desk that they could hear me so that we could communicate. And then all their audio was routed through my Elgato HD60 and to my computer. With the Shure MV7, it has XLR, which I also have. So let me, I totally forgot about this. I have a Scarlett 2i2 audio interface. So if you don't have an audio interface, this feature doesn't matter to you. But if you have an audio interface, you can run XLR from here to the Scarlett. XLR is basically the way that like microphones hook up to stuff for like real good quality mics. That hooks up to the Scarlett, and then you run a USB to the PlayStation, and you use one microphone. That's what we've been doing when we've been streaming Helldivers 2, and it's worked out really, really well. I'm very happy with the quality of what we're getting there. But again, if you want to stream and you want to have your party chat in there, you can do that same setup where you have a second microphone hooked up through USB, and you have a USB mic hooked up to your computer. You could do it with a headset too, but you want to make sure the audio is not going to the headset because then it won't go to your system. That's a whole nother subject. I'm getting way off topic here. I was talking about the behind the scenes of Damn That's Podcasting, and I'm getting into Damn That's Gaming. I guess that's fine though, right? You can't respond because this is a podcast, silly, but I bet you shook your head. I bet you nodded. Don't lie. Hit me up in the comments if you nodded. There's no comments on podcasts, but you could hit us up on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, at the Owen Brody. Or you could pop into one of our streams at twitch.tv/the Owen Brody. But again, let's recap real quick. DaVinci Resolve, great for video editing. So if you stream and you want to edit video, tremendous for that. You can do a ton of different stuff with that. Audacity for audio stuff. If you want to do graphic stuff and you have an iPad, get Affinity Designer. It's like $30. Tremendous. In closing, my goal here was for maybe someone to go, hey, I don't know how to do a podcast. How do I do it? Or, oh, I like listening to these guys, and then I wonder how it's done. Because I'll watch something and I'm like, how do they do that? I remember when I was younger, I had taken all the money that I was making working this job at a music store, and I said, I'm going to buy a video camera. And I bought a video camera, and I taught myself how to edit video. And I'd watch a movie, and I'm like, how do we do that? How do I make that edit? I would just try to figure it out. It was fun for me, and that's how I spent a lot of my time. And now it's the same thing with podcasting and with, streaming. It's like, how do we add more to the production? How do I do that? And it's figuring it out. Or YouTube tutorials now are great. I mean, if you watch like a bunch of YouTube tutorials, you're going to get more out of that than this 25-minute podcast or whatever it ends up being. YouTube is a great resource. Don't get me wrong. Great resource. The only struggle that I had and what I'm trying to alleviate for some of you is that a lot of the search results resulted in search results resulting? Yeah. A lot of the search results resulted in having a subscription-based thing. They were trying to sell me something every time. I'm not trying to sell you anything here. I'm giving you all the free stuff, baby. That's right. All the free stuff that we use to make Damn That's Podcasting possible. And you now have a little bit of knowledge as to what to use. And that was my goal, was to basically give you kind of a quick rundown as to how we do it, what we do. And, you, like I said, you don't need to have the best microphone out there. Like, get whatever works for you. You don't need to have an audio interface with XLR, and you don't have to have a Scarlett 2i2. You don't have to have that stuff. You can use a USB microphone, and with the right knowledge and tools, which Audacity is your tool for sure, you can record good audio. Same thing with OBS, actually. OBS has some pretty good audio filters that allow you to make the audio sound better. So on my stream, I have some filters on there that kind of help my audio sound a little bit even, I guess I would say. That's a whole nother subject. I'll talk for a whole nother 20-ish minutes or whatever this podcast ends up being, if I start going into streaming. But if you listen to this and you took away something, or you learned something, or you were like, oh, you know what, that's kind of cool, let me know. Hit me up at the Owen Brody on X. You can hit me up on Instagram at the Madness of Obro. And yeah, that's really it. That's like the two best places to hit me up, I guess. Like, go ahead and hit me up there. Thank you again, though. I want to thank everybody who's ever listened to an episode of Damn That's Podcasting. I want to thank everybody who's ever hopped into a Damn That's Gaming stream on twitch.tv/TheOwenBrody. And yeah, thanks for all your support. I appreciate you guys. Even the people that come up to me like at wrestling shows and say, hey, I love your podcast. It's a lot of fun. That's great. I hope you guys continue to listen. We'll be back with some episodes. Keep on the lookout. I'm trying to get like a streaming schedule maybe set up. I had a schedule before, and I thought that worked out really well as far as maintaining viewers. And people knew when to watch. They knew when I was going to be on, as opposed to relying on people to hit that notification bell and get alerted that I'm going live and hoping that maybe, just maybe, they're sitting at their house going, what am I going to watch tonight? I'm going to watch Owen Brody die 5,000 times in Helldivers. No? No, you're not? Oh, okay. But anyway, go ahead, twitch.tv/TheOwenBrody. Follow me there. Like I said, I'm going to try to get a schedule going. And yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, let me know, because I enjoyed making it for you. And yeah, more to come, I guess. Doing a podcast by yourself is kind of weird.